welcome. I'm Dr. Amy Glaser-Carpenter, and I have a wonderful guest for you here today, Kathy Cooley, who is a local registered dietitian. I'm super excited about this interview today with Kathy Cooley. Kathy Cooley grew up locally here in Batesville, went to Miami University in Oxford, has been working for Margaret Mary Community Hospital for 33 years, and specializes in education, diet and nutrition education. She specializes in GI issues, weight loss, and diabetes. She also is responsible for the Live Well Now program through Margaret Mary Health, and also incorporating gardening into local schools. You may also know that she runs a blueberry farm out on Pocket Road in Batesville, Indiana. So Kathy has a super interesting background and has a lot to teach us. So thank you, Kathy, for joining us today. Welcome, Kathy. I am so excited to have this interview with you today and to hear a little bit of your immense knowledge on this area. So thanks for joining us.
I'm happy to be here, Amy. I feel like this might be my first podcast. I listen to so many podcasts, and I feel like, oh gosh, I've made it because I might be on a podcast.
That's right. Yeah, this is super exciting. So I have a list of questions that my patients specifically have. Would you mind if we kind of go through this list of questions?
That would be great. And I actually have written notes to myself based on some of those questions. So if I'm looking down, I'm just making sure that I cover the stuff I want to cover. So,
okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
So the first question from my patients is about clean eating. So do you think you could talk a little bit about clean eating?
Yes. So I'm sure you guys, I know in your videos you've talked about it, and I know Sean talked about it. So, and everybody knows that first and foremost, clean eating means not eating processed foods. And that if the fewer the ingredients on the label, or better yet, no label, means that that's probably pretty clean food. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the first step. And that one's hard to cook like that, but easy to understand. Mm-hmm. I do believe that when we eat food that we're eating it as close to how it was raised, whether it be an animal or a plant, as possible, that we're going to get more nutrition because the nutrition hasn't been processed out. But more important, or as important, I shouldn't say more important, but as important, is that other things haven't been added to that food. So food-like substances, I often call them. I mean, things that kind of taste like food, look like food, but I'm not sure really the body doesn't recognize it as food. So just as important as that the food be as it grown is that it hasn't had things added to it. So I think that's when I think of clean eating. I think when you look at your meal prep and you end up you're finished with cooking and you look at your kitchen, if your garbage disposal or your compost bucket is with vegetable scraps and there's nothing in your trash can, then that's a pretty good indicator that you're clean, you're eating clean. So
I like that.
That's probably the easiest way to know if you're doing a good job.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. Great. Okay, the next question is about macronutrients. So I have a patient asking about how much protein, fat, and carbs are recommended at different stages of life. So, so maybe you could talk a little bit about how much you focus on those things, on macronutrients, and if you recommend specific proportions and if that changes through life.
Okay, so this is a hard question. First off, I actually try not to focus on it. I try to focus on micronutrients. So the quality of the food, I think in the end, is more important than the quantity or the percentages. I think that when we eat food that's whole and that's real, our body kind of craves almost the balance that it needs. I know in Sean's video, if you guys didn't see that, she talked about that everybody's different. We all don't need the same thing. And so the only way to do that is to really be able to listen to your body and see what makes you feel good. I know people who say that they literally don't feel good if they don't have a piece of meat on their plate. And for me, I don't want that piece of meat on my plate. It doesn't make me feel good. So I just think people have to find that balance. So the macronutrient balance on their own. But I do have percentages in my brain, like when I work with people with diabetes, when I counsel people, or when I plan diets, because people want planned diets, I do have percentages that I use, and they don't necessarily change through the life cycle. I think as older adults, we probably need a little more protein because our muscles are starting to waste, and so to keep our muscles strong, we may need a little more protein, but I'm not even so sure about that. So the percentages that I go by in general are about 45% of our calories from carbohydrate, about 25 from protein. Oh, wait a minute, I have to make sure my numbers are right. I didn't write these down. And I think it's 35. Does that add up? 35 from, so 45.
60, yeah, 35.
35, 45, 20, and 35. That's 100.
Oh, 30, I guess.
30.
Okay.
30, okay. Yeah.
From
So,
fat, that was the last one, fat.
the last one would be fat.
Okay.
Yes. So if you want to break that down, okay, so one thing I want to say here is, as far as our calorie needs, our bodies need about 15 to 1800 calories a day to get the nutrients that our bodies need. So when we're on these low calorie diets like 1200 calories, we probably can't get all the nutrients our bodies need from food. So we need to eat 15 to 1800 calories just to get all the vitamins and minerals and 100% of our daily needs from our food, which is my first choice. So we need to be active so that we need to burn those calories. So a lot of people say, well, I'm just not hungry, I don't want to eat. Mm-hmm. And so then they're not eating the nutrients that they need. And so being active will help stimulate your appetite so that you want to eat, good food. Yeah. And your body doesn't gain weight from it because you're burning it. So there's this balance between activity and food that I think is critical to understand, especially as we age, because kids are going to be more active. Well, some of them not so much, but so as we age, we have to keep activity at the center of our life so that we want to eat and we want to then get those nutrients in our body. So anyway, I think that we need to aim for, be able to eat that much food. And then a lot of people say, well, again, I'm not hungry, but maybe they're not hungry because they're drinking Diet Coke that kind of fills that void, or they're, I find that a lot, or they're just drinking, I don't know, Propel or all these drinks that I don't consider nurturing. So I think we have to really pay attention to our body to know what our body needs is the bottom line, and focus on the quality of the food. But if you want numbers, then carbohydrate grams should probably be no less than 130 grams per day. So that doesn't follow a lot of the low carb diets, but if you're eating that balance that I was talking about, that's about what we need. All the way up to 200 grams a day would be okay. So 135 to 200, and I can put this in a handout. And fat should be between 40 grams and 60 grams per day. And let's see what I have. Oh, protein is between 40 grams and 112. If you use my numbers, 40 grams for lower calorie, 112 grams of protein for a higher calorie. So I don't know if that's confusing, if that works to hear those numbers.
No, that's helpful. And obviously some of those things like protein, you might choose the lower end with people with specific like kidney issues or Absolutely. Things like that. But yeah. So an overall healthy person, these would be the numbers you're looking at.
That you could feel comfortable with. So if you're reading a food label, it would give you a perspective of what is okay. But I guess it's a good time here to kind of just mention the low carbohydrate diets and the keto diets. And I think they're okay for a short term. Sometimes people enjoy them to kind of reset their body, but I really don't feel like it's what our bodies need for the long term. You can't get the fiber that you need when you eat a low carbohydrate diet. And I guess really, I just thought about this when I counsel people. Sometimes I have them walk out the door and I say, don't count calories, don't count carbohydrate, just count your fiber grams. And make sure that you're getting the fiber that you need every day, because that is going to be the best indicator that you're eating a good, healthy diet. Mm-hmm. So fiber grams, which that should be for women, should be 27 grams a day, and for men should be up to 32 or 35 grams a day.
Okay, minimum, right?
Minimum, yeah, yes. Minimum, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I also try to keep people away from counting things, because I think it gets kind of overwhelming. And
Right.
the only time I bring up counting usually is when I tell them, okay, try to get 3 to 6 cups of fruits and vegetables, or try to make half your food fruits and vegetables. But yeah, counting those healthy things sometimes to make sure you can get like a minimum goal is kind of my approach too. Yeah.
But the average American probably eats, of the people I work with, I see anywhere from a minimum of 6 or 7 grams of fiber a day. I never see hardly anybody get over 20. I mean, you have to be very intentional in your eating to get over 20 grams of fiber per day.
Okay.
And that's what our bodies need for
Yeah.
maximum functioning.
Okay. So. Wow, so much great information. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I have another patient who looks like she's trying to eat not a lot of meat. And so she's looking for non-meat protein ideas, but she doesn't want beans and fish anymore. So what suggestions do you have for her for non-meat protein ideas?
Well, I'm sure she still wants to eat beans and fish. She just wants other options. She's tired of beans and fish. Well, but I have to mention on the bean category that, and I'm going to show you one of my favorite recipes in a little bit, that lentils, I think, stand out as like an incredible bean that's a little different than the other beans. So I'm going to show you a recipe and going to give you a recipe for, roasted butternut squash lentil soup.
Ooh, yum.
So I think beans are still good. So I don't want to just downplay beans. And fish, of course, I think is still a great option. But other ways to get protein is from your grains. And that's why eating carbohydrates, you don't want to get them so low. So there are some high carbohydrate grains that maybe people aren't familiar with or aren't accustomed to using, but farro, which you can buy at Kroger, you can buy it at Dottie's Bulk Food, has 11 grams of protein per serving, which is a lot. Or I should go look at my package. I might be overstating that. It might be 8, but it's a lot of protein. Rice has like 3 grams. So like quinoa, bulgur, and farro are some high protein grains that you can get almost a meal in. They're more expensive. The farro is more expensive, but I tell people it's like you're buying meat along with your grain. So it's worth it. And let's see. Oh, bean-based pastas. So there's garbanzo bean pasta, there's lentil pasta. So right in the normal pasta section. I'm sorry I don't have a box here to show you, but those bean pastas are actually pretty good. The only key when you're making those is that you need to follow the package directions, because if you overcook them, it'll turn to mush and you won't be happy. But if you cook them just even a touch slower or less than the package directions, it'll be a nice firm pasta, and people like it. People like it. So that's another protein source. And another thing is nutritional yeast. I don't know how many people are familiar with nutritional yeast, but it has protein in it. 8 grams in a quarter of a cup, which typically you wouldn't eat a quarter of a cup, but it's a good thing to, there's recipes on the back that make like cheese sauces. You can just add it to soups. You can add it to anything to power up something to give it a little more protein. Greek yogurt is another high protein food that you can get, if you're using dairy at all, that you can get that. So, and tofu. Tofu is another option. I'm not a huge soy fan. I don't like to use a lot of processed soy foods, like all the chicken, all the fake meats. I don't recommend that because I think that's ultra processed. But tofu is really just soybeans. So learning how to cook tofu is another great way to incorporate it.
Good. And I want to make a quick comment. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, you go.
On the nutritional yeast, you mentioned the cheese sauce, and just to clarify for people, it is not dairy. It just tastes like cheese. Yeah. So
yes. You use cashews and nuts and this nutritional yeast, and yes, you're right. It's a cheese-like sauce. Right?
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Those are great ideas, and some of those I don't use, and really I'm going to try out. So thank you for those ideas. Yeah. Good. And even the ideas on how to cook them, like the bean-based pastas and things like that.
Yeah, so, it's important to do it right. That's for sure. Yeah.
Good. Okay, the next question is about supplements. So, and I think they're referring mainly to like a multivitamin. So are supplements really necessary? And if so, which are the most important?
Okay. So I have kind of I guess, kind of focused my attention in my career on food over supplements. And to become an expert on supplements has to do what you've done, Amy, is go to functional medicine classes and really learn, like if a person needs, if they're deficient in something and is there something they need. So overall, I believe that individual supplements, in case they're interested in that, should only be used with a doctor's recommendation or a nutritionist who has studied that well and really understands the balance in the body. Because taking one supplement, like a vitamin of any sort, could actually deplete another vitamin in your body. So you don't want to cause problems. So a multivitamin, though, can be a good option. And some people feel like they want to do that because people are worried that the food supply doesn't provide all the vitamins and minerals that it used to because of the way things are grown. So, and as we get older, and if we aren't eating the 1,800 calories, the 15 to 1,800 calories our bodies need, maybe a multivitamin is a good idea as a little backup. But I absolutely don't think you can depend on the multivitamin to give you everything you need, because we don't know as people everything that's in the food. Learning every, I feel like as a dietitian over the past 30 years, we're learning new nutrients all the time. So we don't know the synergistic effect of food, vitamins with each other in the food. We just don't know that. So I just would never depend on that multivitamin to give me everything that I needed.
So don't use it as an excuse to not eat healthy, right?
Yes, that's the way I would say it. Yes.
Okay. That's great. And you mentioned about soil and that, there are some people concerned that maybe our soil is a little depleted of nutrients compared to maybe 100, 200 years ago. How is your way of kind of dealing with that possible issue?
Well, so grow your own food is probably the best way to deal with it. But that being aside, because I do think that when I drive through California, I've driven down Highway 1 in California and I've seen the farms that are there. And it's pretty amazing, just the monoculture, it doesn't even look real. I mean, when you look at my garden, it looks real. I mean, there's soil there and there's a few weeds and stuff, but this just looks stagnant and just like they're just growing that food because they use product to keep it like that. So so I do think our soil is not being nurtured. They call it regenerative agriculture, not just organic. So organic is interesting and good, but the next step is called regenerative agriculture, where they actually are looking at making sure every time they use everything they do to the soil is actually making it better and improving it, not depleting it. So that's hard to find that food, but if you grow it yourself or get it from the farmer's market, because those farmers are more interested in that sort of thing. So I would say, number one, just if you can, learn to garden. If it's even just a pot of herbs on your back porch, you're getting more nutrients. And don't put it in potting soil. Don't pot them in potting soil, because then you need to pot them in real soil from the ground to make sure that food has the most nutrients. So I think composting is incredibly important to do. I think everybody could learn to do that. I think that getting food as close to home as possible, so supporting your farmers markets is another way to do that. We have a new group in town, a new way to buy food in town called Hoosier Harvest Market Southeast, which is an online farmers market. Are you familiar with that, Amy? Have I even told you?
I haven't heard of that.
So I've had a busy summer and haven't kept as contact as I should with you. But so if you go to Hoosier Harvest Market Southeast,
Hoosier Harvest.
Hoosier Harvest Market, and we you have to order by Monday at noon, and then the food is delivered to Dottie's Bulk Food on Tuesday.
Oh wow!
And so you pick it up Tuesday after 3, and it's from farmers all around our region. So right now, and you can also get meat and eggs and cheese, sometimes milk, I really love their milk. And anyway, and it's all grown in soil by local farmers. So it's going to be open all winter long. So they're going to have things all winter long. So check it out.
Great. Okay.
That's
Yeah.
that's sponsored by the Food and Growers Association, which is our organization in town that, that promotes local food and farmers and all that.
Yeah, it's a great organization. And do they have a website as well, Food and Growers?
Yes. Foodandgrowers.com.
Gotcha. Okay, great. Thanks for that information.
Sure.
That's super helpful. All right, we've got 2 more questions. One is on nutrition to support healthy aging and brains. So I think this person's probably asking specifically about any nutrition that might help prevent like Alzheimer's disease or other forms of dementia. What are your thoughts on that?
So lucky for all of us, and for me as a dietitian, it's really all the same diet. I mean, whether we're talking about heart disease or dementia or cancer prevention or immune boosting or whatever, it's really all the same thing. Clean, good food without a lot of toxins in it, and a lot of it. I mean, eating, like you said, 5 servings of fruits and vegetables every day, or eating that food. But there are foods that stand out for brain health in particular, and those foods would be fish, especially the more fatty fishes like salmon, and then also nuts, and a wide variety of nuts, and preferably raw nuts, not salted, roasted nuts, because again, salted and roasted means more processed, and so when you buy them raw, they wouldn't be as processed. And blueberries. So I have to put a plug in for blueberries, but I raise blueberries, for those of you who don't know, but they keep making the top of the list. Whenever you read about brain food, they're way, way up there. I don't know. Poor Amy had to counsel me through doing all these calls, and I would lose her email. So I eat a lot of blueberries, and I don't know if it's working for me, but I would say, yes, blueberries, but really the darker the color, the fruit and vegetable, probably the more antioxidants it has in it. And that's antioxidant is going to keep your vessels open and keep blood flowing, and that's what you need for dementia. But also for dementia, I just always want to keep adding, so much focus is put on food, but I think in the world of dementia that activity and also socialization and relaxation are of equal importance, because I see people eat pretty bad diets who are sharp as a tack because they're surrounded by their doing things. They're just active and they're involved and they have a purpose. So I don't think it's all food related, even though I think food's important. I don't know if it's all food related.
Yeah, I attended one conference on dementia through the lifestyle medicine, and same things come up, right? So healthy diet, good sleep, active exercise, good relationships, and even like you said, having a purpose, feeling like you are in line with your purpose. So those are all great pieces of advice. And I liked your diet advice about good fats, good healthy fats, like plant-based fats and fish fats, and also, the antioxidants, right? It seems like you can't go wrong if you're eating brightly colored foods, naturally brightly colored foods.
Brightly colored. Yeah. Good.
Thanks.
I mean, it's interesting to hear how your things it all ends up to be the same.
It all is in line. Yes. That's great. Okay, and so the last question I received is asking about your favorite simple to prepare cookbooks or website recommendations. So do you have any specific websites you use or cookbooks you use, or any direction you can point patients?
Yeah, so I had to think about this one for a while, because I'm a dump cook, as I call it. I mean, I just take what I have, and I use a recipe as a base, but certainly don't follow them to a T. But I write down a few websites that I think are good. So first off, the Mediterranean diet is kind of a good basic diet. And so anytime you would Google Mediterranean diet, you're probably going to get some great recipes that are good for brain, good for aging, good for us in general. Their main website is oldwayspt.org. So if you Google, but again, if you put in Mediterranean diet, it'll come up, but it's oldwayspt.org. So that's great. And they have a lot of recipes on that website, plus a lot of good information. Another website that is for those who are interested in eating vegan, but they also have great recipes for all of us, you know, is the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. So it's pcrm.org.
Okay.
And they actually sponsor some cooking classes online you can watch for pretty cheap, like $12. You know, they're not super expensive, that you can get ideas of healthy cooking. Another cookbook author that I have watched, she's been at conferences I've been to, and I think she's got a lot of good recipes, is Rebecca Katz, K-A-T-Z.
Okay.
And her website is www.rebeccakatz.com.
Okay.
So those are some websites that I like. Cookbooks, I mean, I still pull out my old Jane Brody's healthy cookbook, which I've had for 35 years. I use Joy of Cooking. I like some of those books because they're using just basic cooking techniques that, you know, that sometimes are fun to learn versus just focusing on single recipes. So I like cooking technique cookbooks.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so that's what I would use a cookbook for, is the technique of how to make bread, or, you know, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I kind of cook like you do, whatever I happen to have in the fridge. Because sometimes when I try to follow a recipe, I'm like, well, I don't have that ingredient here, and then I give up, right, on the recipe, because it's a lot of work to then go to the grocery store and pick out specific ingredients. So yeah, I think I do the same thing. Well, I want to incorporate these fruits and vegetables or these grains, and kind of go from there. So that's interesting that we do that in a similar way. So yeah.
So I do have some, I do have a couple food items to share. And so I can go get them.
Okay,
right,
great.
You want to pause the
I'll pause
thing?
it.
And
Yeah.
let me read
Okay.
that?
All right. All right, Kathy, I'm super excited to hear what foods you have to prepare for us today.
Okay. So I have a roasted squash and lentil soup that I made. And here is this final product.
Oh, that looks delicious.
So it is. I mean, I know that it doesn't probably look beautiful online, but it's very delicious. But the best part about it is that it is full. So if I counted all the ingredients that are in that soup, I think it's maybe like close to 30. So a lot of different fresh ingredients. So many people look at a recipe and think that if there's even cookbooks out there of 5 ingredients or less. Like, what can you do? People want quick, easy cooking. So my suggestion is to take your time, find a recipe like this lentil soup that you love, but make a super big batch. So you only have to get all dirty things up once, and freeze it, so that you're not cooking every day like this. But I made this on Sunday so that I can have it for lunch every day during the week. And so looking at food like that it's not like, maybe for dinner, I'm just going to pull out some grains and some veggies and stir fry, and that's dinner. But I'm going to sometimes take time to make sure I include every herb and spice and fresh vegetable that I have my hands on all into one soup. And that's what this is. So, so the first thing we're going to start with is the vegetables that are in this soup. So I don't know if you can see all this.
Oh, wow. That's beautiful.
So is that gorgeous?
Yes.
All right, so I'm going to pick up each one just because I think every vegetable needs to be celebrated. So I usually start off by sauteing onions and garlic in slowly, usually the onion first, and then the garlic, slowly in olive oil. And when I use olive oil, I like to, again, we talked about how important fats are for the brain, but you want it to be healthy fats. And healthy fats mean they're not rancid, and that you're using oils that get the right smoke point for your food. So the green bottle olive oil would be for salad dressings, but the yellow bottle olive oil would be for cooking, because this has a higher smoke point. And you still never want to cook it high. It's always cook low when you're cooking with oil. You don't want to spitter and spatter, because that's changing the nature of the oil. So, and I also like to buy them in small containers, because that's going to keep it fresher. Because when it's sealed like this, so don't buy the bargain basement oil because this is what's feeding your brain. So buy the small bottles so that they stay fresh. So anyway, onions and garlic is in there. And then I would take some peppers and dice them up. And again, this is kind of a seasonal soup because this is what's in our garden right now, are lots of peppers. And then I would take some carrots. These are not from my garden. These are organic from Kroger. I really would love to get our local farmers growing carrots, but they're tough to grow. Anyway, shredded carrots are in the soup. And then, though, this is the key that people think I'm crazy. So this is delicata squash. You can use any kind of winter squash. You can use butternut squash, you can use acorn, or you can use delicata. Okay. Delicata is easy to peel. So you peel these squashes just like with a carrot peeler is how I peel them. Then you cut them in half, scoop out the seeds. But this is what I do that I really think makes a difference. I don't put this in the soup directly. I roast those chopped up pieces in the oven first. Okay. So they get very sweet. And you can just, in fact, I had to fight Ted off when I was making this the other day because he just wanted to eat them right off the pan. They were supposed to go in the soup. So, but this is delicious. Roasted butternut squash is probably our favorite thing to eat this time of year. But when you roast it, it brings out the sweetness. So it's different than just putting it in the water to cook with the soup. Okay, so these are roasting while I'm sauteing all these other vegetables. Then I also put some tomatoes in the soup. So just fresh diced up tomatoes. And so that's the first. Now the greens we don't put until the end. So I'm going to tell you about the greens in a minute. So then all those vegetables are in my pot. And then before I put the water in, I add the spices. And you almost kind of like toast the spices with the vegetables. So you can use anything you want. I love turmeric, chili powder, and I have a recipe. You can use coriander, paprika, pepper, salt. Anyway, as many different spices. I have curry powder, as many different spices as I can use. When we were talking about brain health, I do think spices are critical for brain health. I think spices are critical for all of us. So when you look at your spice cabinet, that is medicine. And as many different spices as you can add to your food, the better off you are. But when you toast them, like I'm talking about, that actually brings out the flavor more, and it makes your house smell wonderful. So then you've put that on, and then you're going to use lentils, and you can buy either these are from Dottie's Bulk Food, but this is what they call green lentils, which are probably the more common ones. These are red lentils, which cook a little quicker. You can use a combination of them. These keep their form better. These kind of get a little mushy. The one I made here was the red lentils, and our family seems to like the red lentils a little better, but they're all awesome. And the good thing about lentils is you don't soak them. They only take about 20 minutes to cook. And they're good for diabetics. They're considered one of the best beans for people with diabetes because they don't have quite the carbohydrate response or glucose response that other beans do. So then that cooks. Oh, you have to add water, obviously. You can use broth if you want. I love Langen Meats homemade healing chicken broth. That's actually our recipe from Margaret Mary that they've been making for years for us. It's a fresh bone broth. Okay, so then that's cooking, and right towards the end of the cooking, then you're going to add greens. Right now I have this incredible spinach growing in my garden. It's called Malabar spinach, and it's been like this, the summer spinach, and it's been like this all summer.
What kind of spinach? What did you call?
I get it from the seeds are from 5 Oaks. I think it's called Malabar or Malabar.
Huh.
Malabar. If you ask Matt Nobby at 5 Oaks for the spinach that Kathy Cooley likes, then he'll give you the seeds.
Okay,
but
and that's still growing now.
It grows like on the vine, huh?
That's still growing now.
It's still growing. Yeah. Okay. I just picked this morning.
Great.
Yeah. So right towards the end of the cooking process, I do not want to overcook these greens. So I just take these and slice them up and stir them into the soup. And then by the time you recook it again, they'll cook. So you don't want to overcook the greens. And then the best part is the fresh herbs because this is when at the very end you would put in any fresh herbs you have. And the more fresh herbs we can eat, the better. So you can plant these inside this time of year. You can always, if you want herbs. So this is parsley, flat leaf parsley, and I think I have some curly leaf parsley in here too. Maybe not, but I did. Anyway, so I just take the leaves off the stem and chop it up and put it in the soup at the very end. And that just gives it that burst of flavor that is so good. So this is what I want to say. People are sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, she's crazy. I'm not going to do that. I can't do that. You could take any one of these sections. Like you could just put herbs and spinach in a soup that you buy from the store. You could put spices in anything. If you buy Kraft macaroni and cheese, you could add any of this stuff to it to power that food up. So just think about how, if your kids, whatever, just think about ways that you could get a pepper in something or any of these individual foods into your food, then that's good for you. But if you want to make the soup, then just make a huge pot and you can eat it all week long. So that's the lentil soup recipe. What do you think, Amy?
That looks delicious. And, I think I've mentioned in one of these videos, it might have been in an email that I sent out, but the importance of diversifying our gut flora and improving our microbiome by eating a wide variety of fruits and vegetables and spices. So I think that's why you're doing so many ingredients, right? Is that correct?
Yes.
To improve the microbiome. Okay.
Yes, I do. I think I didn't say that earlier, but when I'm making food decisions about what I'm going to eat, I first think about my gut. What am I doing to nurture the microbiome? Then I think about our world and how does my food choices affect our environment? How does it affect other people? How does it affect farm workers? So I think with those two guiding principles, you're eating intentional and you really make decisions about how you're going to nourish not only your body, but the world. And I think that's kind of a fun way to eat. So, so this, I think, meets that kind of criteria.
Yeah.
So I would encourage you all to try roasted delicata squash lentil soup.
That sounds wonderful. I can't wait to try it. I want to ask you for just a minute about your comment about how does it affect the world. And I think what you're alluding to is things that are highly processed or highly packaged. Is that correct? Or
no, not really.
Okay.
I think what I'm referring to is more, I mean, certainly that's a part of it because we're creating trash. And every time we create trash, we could be polluting our water stream. So we want healthy water. We want good soil and good water is the base of a healthy community in a healthy world. If we don't have healthy soils and we don't have clean water, then that's a problem. So a lot of our agricultural systems, and especially like our meat processing plants and the big confined feeding lots there's a lot of regulations out, but they still could be contributing to problems with our soil and our water and our oceans. So the nitrogen that goes in from our fields up here in Indiana goes all the way down to the Gulf Stream, and they actually have dead zones where fish can't live because of the nitrogen. So it sort of goes on and on. I mean, you could talk forever about the environmental impact. So I'm really talking more about agricultural practices and that how those affect our environment. So there was a great report called the EAT study, capital EAT, by Cornell University. And there's it's like a 100-page report, but they also have just a quick tips of how you can be a food citizen is what I like to call it. And a food citizen is somebody who recognizes that their food choices are affecting other people. And so they've given this great report on how to be a good food citizen. So I can include that when I send you a handout. I'll include the tips of how to be a good food citizen.
And maybe we'll do another talk on being a good food citizen sometime too.
Okay. All right, we'll save that.
Okay.
So the other recipe, I have one more recipe to share.
That would be great.
And that is this is the first time I've made. I don't make this in the summertime. No, my coworker Sarah Heffron, who I teach. So I teach a class at Margaret Mary called Live Well Now, and this is all what we talk about, all this stuff. And our next class will be starting in January. We've done some virtual ones. We've done some live ones. Our first live one actually started yesterday. We have 7 people, so we're limiting the number of people. But it's a 10-week class that we focus on eating well and taking good care of our bodies in many, many different ways. So it's fun if you ever want to learn more about this. But one of our key recipes in there is hot spiced water or hot spiced tea. And it's making your own kind of yogi tea from spices. And so I'm sitting here sipping on this wonderful tea, and I wish you were at my house because you could smell, my whole house smells like it right now. But I use ginger, and I'll include this recipe. So this is fresh ginger, which I love to have at my house for lots of recipes. In fact, sometimes I'll put that in the lentil soup. I didn't this time, but because I didn't have it when I made the soup, but I will today because I'm going to make the soup again because I have all the stuff out, so I might as well cook it. So anyway, slices of ginger. It has whole cloves, whole black peppercorns, and cardamom pods that look like this, and cinnamon sticks, and I think that's it. That's all. Yep. Those are, and I put those in this just kind of quantity, and you put in a big pot of boiling water and let it steep. And then I just, all day long, I keep adding water to those. It'll last, you get tons of cups of teas out of it. Sarah, who's my co-nutritionist at Margaret Mary, she makes this every day. She's actually been through a cancer journey herself, so she's ultra careful. And she drinks, this is her drink. So she drinks it cold. She just makes it on her stove every night and drinks it cold, but she changes it up sometimes, I think, to again add variety. But it's a spice. That's my recipe. You have any questions about that?
That sounds delicious. A lot of those spices, I love those spices. So yeah, I'll have to try that tea as well. I wanted to also say something about Live Well Now. It's a 10-week program that you initiated, right? And how would someone sign up for that? What would be if they wanted to join Live Well Now? And you send out flyers, and I usually do put those out for people interested, but is there a place they can go to sign up for the next class?
Right. So I don't know exactly what the date's going to be. We kind of are following this whole COVID phenomena, but we typically start the second week in January, and we have a class at noon and 5:30. So we have 2 different times, and it's typically on Tuesdays, but again, things are changing. But the best way to find out is you can go to Margaret Mary's website, and we have an events calendar, and on that events calendar, it'll list the different classes. That's one way. Sometimes on our website, when it's close to the class time, they'll advertise it, or you can always call me or call the dietitian's office, which is 812-933-5122. And we'll always be happy to answer any nutrition questions that you have.
Well, thank you, Kathy. This has been amazing. So much great information to share. Is there anything we missed, anything you want to make sure that people understand before we close this interview with you?
Okay, so just because it's the political season, and because it's a tough time, obviously, to bring our world together. I truly believe, and maybe I have rose-colored glasses and maybe it's not possible, but I truly believe, and what my guiding hope is that with one bite at a time, one step at a time, one smile at a time, we can make a difference. I know our politicians, whoever we elect, is incredibly important, but I want to focus back on what we do each day and how we take care of ourselves and how we take care of each other. And I think that if we do become a food citizen and we realize the impact of how our health is on the world, that we can make a difference. And that's, I think, what we need so that we can have hope that the world's going to be okay. for our kids, for our grandchildren, and everybody else. But it's going to take some effort. It's going to take making lentil soup. It's going to take, you know, growing food in your garden. It's going to take some work, not necessarily just to sit back and talk about it. I mean, we got to get our elbows in the grease, so to speak. So I do think we can do it. I hope that that's as motivating as what your weight is or what your blood sugar is, that, you know, that we can really make a difference in our world. So that would be my parting comments.
That's wonderful advice. We need to be proactive. We need to be mindful. We need to be conscious of our decisions. So thank you, Kathy, for that. I greatly appreciate it.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us today. That's such a great interview. Thanks again for all your knowledge you shared.
Okay. Thank you, Amy.